ownership of this book and try to make it reach to as many members as possible, because that is the way we can disseminate our stories with the rest of our colleagues in the world and in India. So that is again a request that I would like to make. On this note, do we have any other questions from anyone? Yes, Upendra.
I just want to thank you for sharing your stories first, but more importantly, really, what's the end game? What's one thing we would like to have? What's the, for the people of Kashmir who are in the camps, what's the one thing? Getting out of that camp, those camps? Absolutely. Is that the one?
Yes, absolutely.
So should we be I'm really looking for ideas that we should gather from this country. What should we be doing from here? Money? Political influence? Would the BJP government come in, Modi government come in, would that be helpful? No? What then?
I think, I know he is an author. This is a very important question, and as we know that Kashmir is a very challenging problem, especially from our context. Number one, we are so minuscule, with so much limited resources, and on top of that we are all scattered. So the biggest challenge for us is that in next 50 years we may become an extinct community. Maybe in next 100 years we will be in the annals of the history that there was a name called Kashmiri Pandit. So it is not an individual problem, it is a collective problem. And the best, as we all suggested, the best thing that we can do is try to keep our story alive, narrate it to our kids. We focus on our culture and heritage as was strongly coming out from the group. That is very important, and that is something that we can do. And collectively try to become a force and try our level best, keep on trying, with the hope that someday maybe some miracle will take place, some dynamics will change in the country. Because in last 23 years, especially in the context of the political scenario, political landscaping in India, now this community is being quoted. Rightly or wrongly, but this community is being quoted by the political masters in the country that why they are being discriminated. You are talking about some other community, you're talking about a particular section, about Muslims. Why you're not talking about this community? So we are now fast approaching that system while others are taking this as an issue. I'm pretty sure if we maintain that speed, it will become a liability for India and they will have to find out a solution to this. I don't think if somebody has a better solution to this in the current context. Important thing is that we have to come together, try to do as much as we can, especially back home where the needs are so immense. There are problems in many sections in our community, so we need to take it collectively and take up this challenge.
Surinder, can I add something to that? Yeah. I think whatever happens has to happen at two levels. One is, like you said, the political level, which is very much out of our control as a community. I mean, what we can do on that end is really build awareness, which, thanks to Rahul, I think we are at a different place today than we were maybe even 2 years ago. But then the other aspect of it is the social aspect, which is us as a community. We have to take ownership of our entire community. I will say this at the peril of being lambasted here, but we are a selfish community, and we have been. I mean, even though a lot of us, many of us here, all of us here have done, a lot to support our community members back in Jammu, but we need to take ownership of our community, and we need to collectively understand that this is our problem to solve. It is not the government's problem. They will not do anything unless we do something. Unless we are vocal, unless we speak with one voice, and that has not been happening. That is very important.
That's right. But on a positive note, I think in these 23 years, a lot of things, also positive things have happened. Especially from our context, from the US community. You will be surprised to know that once I took the leadership role, millions and millions of dollars have been spent for the betterment of the community. That is a very positive thing.
Yes.
If you see in India, we are having temples and bhavans made almost in every city. I don't know, I don't want to debate on that whether that is good or bad, but I think that is also a step towards keeping our community alive. Yes, we have lots of things where we can improve, and I'm sure that maybe we'll get lucky that we'll have more Rahul Pandita coming. And I think we have the blessings, this community has a blessing, and the way we have Rahul Pandita, I'm pretty sure somebody else will come in.
Until then, we'll just work him to death.
Excuse me?
Until then, we'll just work him to death.
Yeah, until then we will not, until he produces some other who will continue it. But yes, the take-home message is we have to be together, try to develop that sense of teamwork. Now the biggest example is that this small community, as I said earlier, Kashmir American Council spent thousands of dollars to have the same thing, to make the ideology of the separatists reach the masses here in the US. But here, our community volunteers did what ISI had to give thousands of dollars. This is an inspiration.
We did everything legally, they did illegally.
Absolutely, we didn't do wrong. And I know Anjali is going to talk about it. I am so optimistic. This was a biggest exercise for such a small community. It's a learning experience. How everybody came together, how everybody took the ownership, tried to reach out to the universities, talked about, no, why not? There were glitches, but finally they agreed, yes, we will have his speech. And I think Rahul was the only person who had the exclusive public events. Now, speaking at Carnegie Endowment for International Peace as an exclusive public event for such a small community is nothing less than a miracle. With no government supporting, with no large mass supporting, but our volunteers' perseverance. These are the small things that we should take lessons. And imagine if some volunteers were able to do such a big exercise, what will happen when we all together will take some project and do it? I don't see that it will not be fulfilled. So it's a question of time. Let's pray to God. Let's have that determination. I'm pretty sure on a positive note we will achieve a lot. All right. Any other questions?
I'm curious, Rahul, first of all, you've done a commendable job, and it's difficult to share your personal story and also your global story. But how did you see the reaction from other communities? You know, you're sort of preaching to the choir because everybody here has some emotional scar from their parents or relatives. So, you know, the Marathas and the Sikhs and the other communities, South Indians, what was the reaction, and can we build the bridges? Because we're such a small community. And if you look at the history, you know, long back, the Kashmiris were never fighters, so they went to Sikhs for help. So can we approach other
But they fought along with them.
Because I think it's not just a silo problem, we need to pull others. So what was the reaction when you...
Well, the response from the rest of India has been overwhelming. Many people have responded, especially from South India, saying that they only were aware of a small portion of the actual story, or were not aware at all. And they've read this book, they've read excerpts which has led them to the book. Because one of the earlier excerpts of this book was published in the Hindu newspaper, which is quite popular in southern India. So that kind of led to a lot of readership of this book in that part of the country. So lot of response from the United States, not from my own people, but from other communities as well. Some student discovered it in some library and she read it and then wrote her doctoral dissertation or a college dissertation based on this book about Kashmiri Pandit. So a lot of response. The response to Kashmir Valley is, of course, been on predicted lines where this book has, by the way, sold more copies in Kashmir Valley than in Jammu. So that should tell you a lot about the kind of curiosity they have had about this book. So they have kind of debunked this book, saying that it's a pack of lies, etc. But like I said, this book, because I was also aware of the fact that memory could be very elusive. I was writing about events which happened 23 years ago. So every incident narrated in this book has been sort of validated and revalidated with a strict journalistic regimen. So they've not been able to puncture any kind of hole in the narrative. But at the same time, there's this very small, I mean, I can count them on hands, small number of these young people from Kashmir Valley, boys and girls, who were born in the post-1990 Kashmir of, post-1990 Kashmir, who have only grown after Kashmiri Pandits left, and they have no idea. They've had no reference to context of how it was living with Kashmiri Pandits in the valley, and they were fed on these stories in the last 23 years about how elitist we were, and how a revolution took place, and all these feudal landlords were driven out, evicted from their lands. So they are sort of getting in touch with me with a sense of disbelief and saying that, oh, we never knew that this had happened. So one is trying to keep in touch with them and see if there can be ways by which the small percentage of people, younger generation from Kashmir Valley, if their flock can be increased in some way. But apart from this optimism, there are very big pockets of pessimism in Kashmir Valley, because in the last few years what has also happened is this severe radicalization of youngsters, especially in rural Kashmir, where you have these madrasas and a lot of emphasis on Wahhabi Islam and Sharia, etc. So both these tracks are really running parallelly in Kashmir.
I was not going to ask this, but it's been bothering me for a while.
Okay, go ahead.
It's more of, so we've all been through some painful historical impressions of either family or reading your book, sympathizing or relating to somebody, what happened in the past. And actually I've had a gun held to me in Kashmir.
Sorry?
I've had a gun held to me in Kashmir. And I was a kid, and my dad told me just getting on a plane that night and come home. So I have a lot of anger in terms of losing what we had, to the extent that I won't let my extended family sell our house in the valley. So is there any real appetite, or is there any, I know you're only an author, but do you ever see us securing our roots back? Or should we stop calling ourselves Kashmiri Pandits? And there is no home. A lot of people have talked about going back. We heard the Panam Kashmir story. And the more you hear about Kashmir, is more, as you talk about the madrasas, that they're getting radicalized. So is this going to be a lost paradise? Or are you focusing your next book? Or if you're not, would you think about
I think it's a personal choice you have to make. It cannot be a collective decision for all of us.
No, I'm not trying to make a decision. All I'm saying is, is there any appetite?
So if you're asking me, I'm never going to leave the hope of returning to Kashmir. So in my lifetime, I'll make every serious effort to make any kind of attempt. If I can get a foothold back in Valley, I'll be the first one to take it. So like I've taken this decision, I think all of us sitting here have to take their own individual decisions. But as far as I'm concerned, I'm never going to lose that hope.
Do you see any sort of organized attempt or any forward-looking journalism that can instigate or inspire that thought among the people?
Well, I'm hoping that others will come forward with their stories. Like I was telling my friends, I would be very interested in knowing or getting a narrative from one of the refugee camps, because I have had no experience of living in a refugee camp. So it's important that someone, youngsters come forward. Other people come from my age come forward who have lived through those difficult periods and write their stories. Not only write their stories, make films about it, do papers over it, talk about it to other people. So as long as we are doing that, I think we will be fine as a community.
Yeah, I think I'm just talking about a little paradigm shift, and I'm not sure if I got my point across, is the more we talked about how painful it was, these kids sitting here, they're never going to go back. They won't even think about it. We don't even want to go visit because it's a terrible place. A lot of people die.
I don't think
it was a bad place. Let me finish, please.
I don't think we would make a sweeping statement on everybody's behalf. Let them decide on their own whether they want to return to Kashmir or not.
I'm just presenting my view.
You said all of us. That's why I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean, if you keep telling the story about how bad it was, which is an important story to tell, which is an important piece of history to document, but all that does is it creates fear, it creates bad memories, it brings back that bad memories. So is there any forward-looking...
So what do you want me to talk about? Houseboats?
I'm not criticizing. I'm not criticizing.
No, I think Navneet has made a very important question. I agree with what you are saying, actually. But let me just give you 2 cents. See, first of all, we don't love Kashmir because it's beautiful. We love it because we have an old ancestry, 5,000-year-old rich ancestry there. Now, again, why I said it's challenging? Because living is a coexistence, religious coexistence. Now, basic tenets of India is secular, democratic. Now, this is the only Muslim majority state in India where the majority doesn't want us, because it's the onus of the majority, the religious coexistence. Now, coming to your point, this is a painful story, yes, agreed. But this is a story we have to keep alive. Hoping one day that while we keep this alive, that something will happen and maybe Article 370 will be removed. Or maybe some situations in the political landscaping will take place which will become more congenial for us to go. But again, I'm pretty sure if things improve, like all of us, most of us, I'm talking about US, that we always try to invest and invest in the apartment somewhere in Delhi, in Gurgaon. I'm pretty sure if the environment is congenial, we will invest there also. We will go, we will visit, even though we will not stay, but that is our right. My child has a right to go to the ancestral place. Your child has a right to go to the ancestral place. And they have been deprived of this right. So, I mean, we have to keep this story alive with the hope for the best sometime. Roman. I don't know, I don't know, you won't be satisfied with the answer, but this is so complex. But this is how I feel.
I was not looking for an answer. I was looking for people to think about it.
Okay.
Yeah, one thing that kind of what Navneet said, and we kind of missed it, is that, like Rahulji said, that there is a radicalization happening in the local community. So his book, he has maybe 10 people from the valley who have said, oh yeah, we didn't know about this. And I know personally through contacts that, they don't realize that what lies they were told. So what Navneet was saying kind of, I think, is that, that's an attempt, but we also have to make another attempt or keep on making such journalistic attempts to show not just the valley, but the whole of India and whole of the world, that how radicalization is changing the people, because once they are aware that what lies we have been told, they will be more accepting to take us in, the pundits who want to go back in. So I think that's very important, and that's what he was kind of referring to, that we have to tell our story, but we also have to go back and say, hey, this place has been radicalized. I mean, I know of prominent doctors who are following this madrasa thing. I mean, they need to be made aware that, radicalization will not help. It's not helping. So we have to go on that front too. I mean, journalists have to start writing about that too. So it's like taking more of an offensive approach than just being defensive and saying. So you have to, and that will get the more of the youth there who are completely right now thinking that, oh, the pundits were elitists and we kicked them out, there was a revolution, so that has to be changed. And I think Navneet kind of wanted to tell that point, which I think is very important.
You want to say?
I think we're putting the whole weight of our pain and suffering on journalists. Journalists, at the end of the day, whether they are in the United States of America, whether they are in India or they are in Kashmir, they are looking for a story. And when a journalist goes to a Kashmiri Pandit to understand his part of the story, and the Kashmiri Pandit begins with the story of Sikandar Butchikan, he's frankly not interested in that story. You know, he's not there for a history lesson. He is a professional who's looking for what is in it for me, what is the kind of story you have. So when you are filing a case against Bitta Karate after he has been freed, when the community is filing a case and filing an RTI and asking the government of India, why the hell did you leave this terrorist out? The media is interested in that story. The media will cover it in prime time. The media will put it on the front pages. But if we are sitting in our homes, earning our bread and butter, looking for a livelihood and doing our festivals, then the media is not interested in our story. You know, they are not going to come to our houses and say, oh, what can we cover? How can we cover today? We have to give them stories. We'll have to do things that will become stories. So that does not happen automatically. So unless we are passive ourselves and hoping, oh, the media has ignored us, the media has ignored us. The media will ignore because media is a professional organized, they're professional people. They are doing their job. So if they're getting those stories from Kashmir Valley, they'll go and grasp it. If they're not getting any stories from Kashmiri Pandits, because Kashmiri Pandits are not doing anything, then, the issue will never be covered.
Thank you. Okay, and I'd like to now invite Ms. Anjali Zuchi to talk about the relevance of doing things like this. If she's here. Okay, yes, okay. Here she is.
It's about what to say. Sorry. Rahul is a hard act to follow, so, and I know there are many of you here that are more qualified to be up here speaking than I am, so I'm going to make it brief and just talk quickly about Rahul's visit starting October 21st, was it?
Yeah.
Yeah. The idea for this started about 8 months ago. Was it about 8 months ago, right? A seed was planted and the community came together, volunteers came together, and at the end of Tuesday, November 5th at 8:30 p.m., Rahul will have spoken at 7 different institutions, including the Carnegie Endowment, several universities, and the World Affairs Council here in Houston. He will have attended 8 or 9 community events. I tried to look for some numbers, and since Pamposh is not here, I made him do some work in India. What we found out, Rahul, you might be interested in this too, is so far about 350 people attended the institution events. Not counting, of course, the event that is going to happen in Austin on Monday and in Houston on Tuesday. So if we add the attendance there, we're talking about 450 people. About the same number of people in community events, maybe a little less. The point to note is that the events that happen at various universities, at the Carnegie Endowment, that's going to happen here, these events were attended and will be attended by not Kashmiri Pandits primarily. In fact, there are few Kashmiri Pandits there. A lot of people that attended and will attend in Houston and in Austin are academics. These are policymakers, people from the Brookings Institute. Stephen Cohen was at the Carnegie event. A huge coup to have him be there and listen to our story. These are people who make a difference, who actually affect policy. In our community events, we've had, the number of people that we've had, Rahul has touched 900 souls so far. And it's not just 900 people that he's touched, because I think this is going to have a ripple effect. All of us, I think, hopefully, we will go out and talk about this more. We will engage our friends who are not Kashmiris, give them a book as a present, have them read it, and then talk about what happened. I know we've done that a lot. Kamposh and I have, and I'm sure all of you have too. We've just started something. And I think one of the things I think what is important to note is this was a little idea and it grew into what it is right now, what it has become so far. And it was all done by volunteers in our community. And if anyone had any doubt that we can come together and do something impactful, well, you have an example that will hopefully put your doubts to rest. And so that's the important takeaway from here. The other thing that I want to talk about, and I know Rahul has touched on it, Surinder has touched on it, something that is very, very close to my heart. I think Rahul said this the best. We treat our children as though they're not the smart, intelligent, sensitive people that we know they are. We try to shield them from the pain that we know about, that we have experienced ourselves or we have had family experience. I think it's time to stop that. I think it's time for us to tell them the story. I mean, I've heard a lot of us talk about, we're like what happened to us is like the Holocaust, that the Jews went through. For one thing, even though I'm not a Jewish person, I feel offended because the scale is not the same. Yes, regardless of the pain and suffering that we've suffered, there is one learning though to take from what happened with the Holocaust and how the Jewish people moved from that is they don't shield their children from the story. They talk about it every day, every single day. They write about it, they share it. It is in our faces. It is part of history, and that is the history they teach. We need to teach our history to our children, and it starts with Rahul's book. It goes back to Sikandar Butchikan too, but I think this one is equally, if not more important. Let's talk to our children about this. Let's tell them what happened. This is not about being communal. This is about a culture that is being killed minute by minute, day by day, if we don't do something about it. And these kids are the ones who are going to carry it forward, if at all. And these kids are the ones who are going to carry forward our story and hopefully keep it alive. So let's take off the kid gloves and let's talk to them. And that's all I have to say. Thank you so much. Thank you, Rahul, for everything.
Thank you, Anjali. Before we go on for a vote of thanks, anyone amongst you want to speak few words? Rahul? I know you're not a talker.
I don't know, I'm involved with the Hindu Swaram Sevak. We were having one discussion one day at the Hindu Swaram Sevaks. We were having one discussion with the Hindu Swaram Sevaks once that if India doesn't survive, will Hindus survive? If India is no longer there, or if India is divided into small parts. There are big authors like Rajiv Malhotra who are writing books on what's happening and how there's a lot of money coming from the West in splitting India into various parts and everything. So that was the key discussion point, and we came to the conclusion that if India is split up, Hindus will not survive. So the same thought was going through me that if Kashmir, if we don't go back to Kashmir, will the Kashmiris survive? And how long will they survive? So that's a question which I can't answer, but I don't know, I don't have answers, but we have to do something to keep the Kashmiri community alive, Kashmiri Shaivism alive. There's a huge knowledge base. I myself, I know very little about Kashmiri Shaivism, but we have been blessed with, Swami Lakshmanju. We used to be very close to him. There's so much I have to learn, there's so much kids have to learn. We have to keep this culture going. I don't have the answers. Maybe this is the start, but let's do something, and he's doing great work, Sundarji. So let's continue doing it, and we'll see how we can help out.
Thanks, Rahul. Anyone? Sushma, you want to speak?
I want to speak something.
Oh, please. We want to conclude with your blessings, but before that,
no,
you have to speak.
This is not related to Rahulji's book, but it is related to us. Okay, this is about. Which one mic we are talking here a lot about things, and things will happen. Kashmiris will not get extinct at least in the next 50 years, because I'm going to be here in the next 50 years. So, we're going to make it. Yes, we have to let our kids know what's going on, what happened, who you are, where you're from, and what are your roots. It's very, very important. And even grafting, when we do grafting and also, but still, कुछ मूल दिमाग पन्नी मूल च दिमाग गुलाब से graft करो समझी चेहरा में मूल so it is very, very important for us to let our kids know, certain root sketch and what we have all this. But at the same time, while we're doing this, and since we all here are Bhagwan Singh Daya Singh doing okay, and I think right now there are a lot of people from our community who need your help. And recently, KOA has joined hands with KMACT. KMACT is Kashmiri Medical Emergency Trust Fund. They are a handful of people, very, very dedicated, honest people, who are helping out Kashmiris who are in need of medical need. Some days back, I had to put a post on my Facebook wall about, she's my namesake, Mr. Sunita Tiku. And she's suffering from breast cancer, and she needs 15 lakhs for her septic injection. She cannot afford it because poor lady just lost her husband 6 months back. And she's very young. So things like that. Open up your hearts. Send the money to KOA. KOA is going to send the money to KMACT. And KMACT helps right away. I mean, they probably Surendraji can, vouch for that. They're very, very honest people. There is no bungling. There is absolute honest, dealing of money, and the money is only used for their medical use. So please, please, please open up your hearts. Open up your hearts to the Bharat. Open up your wallets. Open up your checkbooks. If you want to write me a check today, give me a check. If you have, if you want to write it to KOA or write it in my name, I encash it here, and I have a bank account in India, because KMAC does not have any direct foreign, they cannot accept foreign funds. But please, please, please do that. It's my humble request. And one more humble request is listen to radiosharda.com.
We did, we heard you sing.
Thank you very much.
Sunita.
I think you should have been at my post. That would have been much better. But thanks, yes, I agree that there are lots of needs that the community has, especially the deprived section. who are the victims of things beyond their control. And if we try to do certain things that will be good for us. Anyone else who wants to speak? Teji, you are also a calm listener, patient listener. गाना करवाइए, fundraising कराएंगे उसके लिए. हमको fundraising कराना है.
I must say thanks to him, I learned a lot. Where is he? Rahul. Yeah.
Teji was.
Yeah. You did a good job. I didn't know much of what you talked about really. Something was eye-opening. I never lived in Kashmir, but this was good. And another round of applause for him.